My son shouted at me in front of 24 people at Christmas dinner. "Mom, if you want to keep living here, you pay rent like any other tenant or you leave." What Dale did not know was that the condo he was standing in, the one he bragged about owning through his brilliant career as a chef, was mine. The gray Cadillac he parked in the garage every night was mine. The credit card his wife Brooke swiped for handbags on Michigan Avenue was mine. Everything, every single thing in that beautiful home was mine. I am Mavis Albright. I am 63 years old, and this is the story of how my silence almost destroyed my only son, and how breaking it finally saved him. The smell of roasted turkey filled every corner of the condo that night. I had been up since 6 a.m, rolling out the crust for the apple pie, pressing the pecan bars into the pan, glazing the sweet potatoes, the way Dale had loved since he was a boy. 24 people were settling into the dining room. Cousins and Uncle Dale's friends from the restaurant, Brooke's followers, and colleagues from her little world of lifestyle content. The long table gleamed with china and crystal that caught the light of the tree. I moved between the kitchen and that table the whole evening, serving clearing, refilling glasses of a good California red. My apron was streaked with gravy. My hair was pinned back in a plain bun. My hands, worn thin by the years, shook a little as I carried the heavy platter. "Mavis, sit down for a while," my cousin Diane told me with that soft, pitying smile I had come to know so well. "You have done more than enough." "I am fine," I said, forcing my mouth into something friendly. From my spot beside the open kitchen counter, I could see the whole room. Dale sat at the head of the table in a crisp white shirt, wearing the watch Brooke had given him last year. He was talking to my nephew about the restaurant, about the new tasting menu at the Larkspur, about the food critic who had come through in November. "This year has been insane," Dale was saying, waving his wine glass. "The pressure of running your own place, people have no idea. But hey, a head chef with his own kitchen in this city does all right. It is enough to keep this place the car, all of it." Brooke beside him smiled with real satisfaction. She wore a deep green dress that had cost more than most people make in a week, and her nails caught the candlelight as she rested her hand on Dale's arm. And even then, she added, lifting her voice just enough for the table to hear the bills never stop coming. "This home, the upkeep, the lifestyle, none of it is free in Chicago." A few heads nodded. My Uncle Hal cleared his throat and said they are right. Rent in this part of town is brutal. You cannot touch a decent place near here for less than $3,000 a month. "Exactly," Dale said, straightening in his chair. "That is why I always say you have to earn it. Nobody hands you anything in this city." I felt something tighten low in my stomach, but I kept slicing the turkey. Nobody looked at me. Nobody noticed how my hand gripped the carving fork harder than it needed to. There was a lozenge of nitroglycerin in the pocket of my apron, the way there always was now, and I felt the small weight of it against my hip and thought of Walter and how the same tired heart that took him might one day come looking for me. The talk kept circling money, the cost of everything, how hard it was to make ends meet from people who had just opened the third bottle of $40 wine. And then it happened. Dale wiped his mouth with his napkin, took a slow sip, and looked directly at me. There was something in his eyes I recognized at once, the same steadiness his father Walter used to get when he had made up his mind about something important. But this time that look brought nothing good. "Mom," he said in a tone that cut every other conversation short. The room went quiet. 24 faces turned toward me. "I have been thinking," he went on, setting his glass down with a soft, deliberate click, "that if you want to keep living here with us, you should be contributing toward the rent like any adult who shares a space." Time simply stopped. "It is only fair, right?" he added, glancing around the table for agreement. "We are all grown-ups here, and if that is hard on a widow's pension, well, maybe it would be better for you to find something more in line with what you can manage." Brooke nodded, sipping her wine. "These days, everyone has to be responsible for their own expenses," she said, "even family. In fact, because we are family, we should be honest about it." I looked around that table. My cousin Diane found something fascinating in her plate. Uncle Hal coughed and studied his fork. A couple of Dale's friends nodded slightly as if it made a certain sense. My Aunt Vivian even murmured that it was true that at our age we ought to be a little more independent. Not one person, not a single soul at that table raised a voice for me. Nobody said, "How can you talk to your mother that way?" Nobody asked, "Are you really telling your own mother to leave on Christmas?" The silence was so thick I could hear the kitchen clock ticking against the wall. I felt as if 28 years of sacrifice, of sleepless nights, of building something out of nothing so that my son could have a life, had simply evaporated into the cool air of that condo. Carefully, I set the carving fork down on the counter. I folded my napkin and laid it beside my untouched plate. I stood feeling my knees complain. "Thank you all for coming," I said in a voice so calm it surprised even me. "This Christmas dinner is probably the last one I will spend in this house." Dale blinked, confused. "Mom, do not be so dramatic. We are just being realistic with you." "You are right, Dale," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "It is time to be realistic." I turned and walked toward the hall that led to my room. Behind me, I heard the scrape of chairs, an uncomfortable murmur, someone trying to rescue the evening with So Who Wants Dessert. I closed my bedroom door. The click of the latch was soft, but in my head it sounded like the closing of a whole chapter of my life. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around the small room that had been my refuge for the past 3 years. A single bed, an old dresser, 2 framed photographs on the nightstand. I picked one of them up. Walter and me the day we opened our very first place, a narrow little diner at the edge of a field back in Ohio. I was 28 in that picture. I wore a plain cotton dress, and my hair was tied back the same as always. Walter held the ceremonial scissors ready to cut the ribbon. Behind us stood our first dream come true, a building barely bigger than a garage. "How did I get here?" I asked the quiet room. "How did I go from a young woman with a dream to a widow scolded at her own table for the crime of being poor?" Let me tell you the truth that not one person at that table knew. I met Walter in 1985 in a small town in Ohio. I was 23. I kept the books for a feed store and did payroll for 2 other businesses on the side. He was 25, a line cook with the most patient hands I had ever seen, hands that could feel when the bread was ready without any clock. We married in 1986 in the little church on Maple Street. Our honeymoon was 2 nights at a lake an hour away. When Dale was born, we were living over a laundromat in an apartment so small the crib touched our bed. Walter cooked 12 hours a day. I did the books at the kitchen table with the baby asleep beside me. Every dollar we did not absolutely need went into a coffee can on top of the refrigerator. No trips, no new clothes, just work and saving, and one dream to have a kitchen of our own. It took us 5 years of counting every cent, 5 years of turning down dinners with friends because we had already eaten at home, 5 years of coats from the church rummage sale. In 1990, we finally opened that little diner at the edge of the field, 12 tables and a griddle for less money than a decent car costs today. We did the work ourselves. Walter built the counter. I painted the walls. Dale, barely walking, handed us rags. Every morning a meadowlark sang from the fence post out back, and Walter would stop whatever he was doing to listen. When the lawyer asked us what to name the company, Walter did not even pause. "Meadowlark," he said, "because that bird works from dawn to dark and never once complains, and neither do we." Walter had a gift. He could walk into a dead-shuttered restaurant and see exactly what it could become: the light, the smell, the way people would feel sitting in it. I had a different gift. I could make a single dollar do the work of 3 in a ledger. We opened a second place, then a third. We started a small line of jams and baked goods that grocers wanted on their shelves. In 1998, we moved the whole operation to Chicago, where the dream had more room to grow. When the crash came in 2008 and everyone around us was selling in a panic, we bought carefully, patiently, the way Walter read a rising loaf. By 2019, Meadowlark Hospitality Group ran 9 restaurants across the city, a thriving craft food line, and the buildings that housed most of it. On paper, it was worth more than $100 million. Not one person at that Christmas table knew that the tired woman refilling their glasses had built it. And then on a cold Tuesday in the spring of 2019, Walter put his hand flat against his chest while he was going over the plans for a new kitchen in our back office. "Maeve," he said, "just my name," and then he was gone. A massive heart attack, the doctors told me. He did not suffer, they said, as if that were a comfort a person could hold. After the funeral, I stepped back from the front of everything. I let Raymond Whitfield Walter's right hand for 20 years, and the one man who knew the whole truth, sit in the chief executive's chair and take the meetings and shake the hands. I kept a small office in the back and did what I had always done, made the dollars behave. I opened the drawer of the nightstand and took out a manila folder that no one in that condo knew existed. Inside were the papers of a life. The operating agreement for Meadowlark Hospitality Group. The documents naming the Albright Family Trust as the controlling member and me as the one who controlled the trust. The housing agreement for this very condo owner listed as Meadowlark. The registration for the gray Cadillac held by Meadowlark. The statements for an additional credit card primary account holder, Mavis Albright. I turned the pages slowly. Each one was a piece of what I had built and of what I had let my son believe was his. 3 years earlier, Dale had finished culinary school and taken a job as a sous chef for a modest wage, good work, but not the life he dreamed of. He came to see me one afternoon at the little back office where I kept my head down while Raymond ran the public side. "Mom," he said, sitting across from my desk, "I want to run my own kitchen. There is a spot opening at a place called the Larkspur, but they want a name and I do not have one yet." I looked at my son. He had Walter's eyes, that same steady certainty. But there was a softness in him, too, a young man who did not yet know the real price of things. So I made a quiet call. I moved him into that kitchen as head chef, and I gave him the title of managing partner, and I built a story around him, the self-made chef who clawed his way up so that he would never guess his mother was behind the curtain. What he never understood was that the title was only a title. He held no ownership, no share of the company that anyone had earned or vested. He was, in the plain language of the lawyers, an employee at will with a chef's coat and a grand name, paid a salary and a bonus that the company could grant or take away at its pleasure. I let him rent this condo at a fraction of its worth, an employee rate I called it. When he married Brooke 2 years ago, I handed him an additional card linked to my account. Just for emergencies, I told him, in case you ever need something important. Something important turned into tasting menus and weekend trips and a handbag that cost more than a nurse earns in a month. The statements came to me every month, and every month I paid them in silence. $600 here, $1,200 there, $3,000 for a weekend in Aspen. I never said a word. When Dale asked whether he might use one of the company cars to look the part for investors and suppliers, I approved it from my little office and told Raymond it was temporary, just until he saved for his own. 3 years later, that temporary car was still the gray Cadillac in space number 7. Why did I do it? I asked the photograph of Walter on the nightstand. Why did I let him believe the lie? Because I wanted him to be happy. Because I wanted him to feel capable and successful and proud. Because I told myself that if I gave him everything, gratitude would grow in him on its own. I was wrong. Silent love that sets no boundaries is not love at all. It is quiet permission for selfishness to grow. And that night at the head of my own table, I finally saw what I had grown. I took out my phone. It was almost midnight on Christmas. I dialed a number I kept on speed dial. "Raymond, it is Mavis. Mavis, Merry Christmas. Is everything all right?" His voice came back already worried. Raymond Whitfield had been Walter's closest friend in the business, and after my husband died, he had become my confidant and the only man alive who knew my true place in the company. "I need you to pull everything connected to Dale first thing in the morning," I said, looking at the photos on the wall. "The condo agreement, the vehicle authorization, his employment terms, the statements on the additional card." There was a silence on the line. "Mavis, are you certain?" "Completely," I said. "It is time my son learned the real meaning of that word he loves so much. Independence." "I will call Frances in the morning, too," Raymond said quietly. "Good," I answered. "Have her ready." I pulled a suitcase down from the closet shelf, and dust rose off the top of it. Inside were the tags from a trip to the coast that Walter and I had planned and never taken. I began folding my clothes. I did not own much that lived in this house. 3 blouses, 2 pairs of slacks, a cardigan, my comfortable shoes. It all fit easily in half the suitcase. I stopped in front of the mirror. A 63-year-old woman looked back at me, gray hair, pinned back lines around the eyes, hands stained by 40 years of work. I had spent almost my whole life building something that mattered, and in the last 3 years I had let my own son trample it while I carried his platters in silence. I zipped the suitcase closed. I took my purse, my wallet, my phone, and the keys to my other home. The real one, a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood that Dale had never once visited, the place I went when I needed to stop being the poor mother and simply be Mavis Albright again. I opened the bedroom door. Laughter and music drifted down the hall. They had gone back to the party. They probably imagined I was crying in my room, that in the morning I would come out red-eyed and apologetic and beg forgiveness for spoiling their Christmas. I rolled the suitcase down the hall, and the wheels made a low sound on the hardwood that cut through the music like a blade. The talk stopped. 24 heads turned. Brooke spoke first with that same gentle, condescending smile. "Mavis, do not be dramatic. Nobody is throwing you out. We were only having an adult conversation about responsibilities." "You are right, Brooke," I said. "It is time all of us were responsible adults." Dale got up from the table, his cheeks flushed from the wine. Mom, where are you going? I did not mean tonight. I only wanted you to understand. I understood perfectly, I said, standing steady by the door. I understood that you believe this home is yours, that the car is yours, that everything you have came from your own 2 hands. Because it did, Brooke said, rising too. Dale works hard. He is up before dawn. He closes the kitchen at midnight. Nobody gave him a thing. I looked her right in the eye. There was so much I could have said in that moment. I could have opened the folder and laid the papers out on the turkey. But I did not. Because the deepest lesson does not come from words. It comes from consequences. You are right, I said simply. Nobody gives you anything for free. I will see you. I opened the door. Dale took a step toward me. Mom, at least let me call you a car. No need, I said, I already have one coming. Then text me when you get wherever you are going, he said, just so I know you are safe. I looked at my son, the boy I had rocked to sleep, the young man I had watched walk across a stage in a chef's coat, the grown man who had just chosen his pride over his mother. When I feel it is necessary to reach you, I will, I said softly. Merry Christmas, Dale. And I closed the door behind me. The hallway was quiet and cold under its white lights. I rolled my suitcase to the elevator. I did not look back, and I did not cry. I only breathed, and for the first time in 3 years, I breathed without the weight of a lie pressing down on my chest. The elevator dropped 7 floors in silence. When the doors opened, the night doorman looked up, surprised. Mrs. Albright, are you leaving so late? Frank, I said, remembering his name, even though he surely thought I was only Dale's mother. When someone comes for the gray Cadillac in the next few days, the one in Space 7, let them take it. They will have authorization from the company. Frank blinked but nodded. Whatever you say, ma'am. Outside, a black sedan waited at the curb. It was not a cab. It was a Meadowlark car driven by Curtis, one of our people I trusted. Evening, Mrs. Albright, he said, lifting my suitcase. To the apartment, please, I told him, and settled into the back seat. Chicago slid past the window, the lit streets, the shop windows glowing on Christmas night, the lake somewhere out there in the dark. This city, my city, I had built my life in it, brick by brick and dollar by dollar, and somewhere along the way I had become invisible in my own story. The apartment was in a plain, low building on a quiet street, no doorman, no marble, just a warm little home with photographs of Walter on the walls. It smelled of a place that is loved but not lived in often. I set my suitcase by the door and sat down on the couch in the absolute silence. No music, no laughter, no sun telling me to pay or get out. Just me and the decisions I would make at dawn. I took out my phone. 3 missed calls from Dale. 1 message. Mom, please tell me you are okay. I did not want you to leave like that. It was just a conversation. Call me. I did not answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and signed into the company system, and I clicked on the folder that held everything tied to my son. His employment terms at will salary and discretionary bonus, no ownership. The condo company housing month to month. The Cadillac company vehicle authorization revocable at any time. The additional card limit, $5,000, linked to my primary account. 3 clicks. That was all it would take to change my son's life. Was I being cruel? I asked the quiet. No, I was being a mother who had finally understood that the greatest act of love is not to hand a child everything, but to teach him the true weight of every single thing. I closed the laptop. In the morning, I would call Francis and it would begin. That night, for the first time in 3 years, I slept all the way through until light. The Meadowlark offices took up 2 floors of a building on Wacker Drive, with the river sliding gray and slow below the windows. I arrived at 8:30 on the morning of the 27th of December. Tessa at the front desk nearly dropped her coffee when she saw me walk in, because in 3 years I had come through the front door, perhaps twice. Mrs. Albright, she said, good morning. We were not expecting, welcome. Good morning, Tessa, I said. Is Raymond in? He is, she answered. He came early. He's in the conference room with Francis. I walked down the hall past the framed photographs of our restaurants, the first diner in Ohio, the Chicago flagship, the Kraft food plant. In one of them, taken at an opening years ago, Walter stood in the middle in a chef's coat, grinning at the camera, and just behind his shoulder, a little out of focus, was a woman in a plain dress holding a folder. No one who walked that hall ever knew who she was. Just another face in the background. I knocked and went in. Raymond stood up the moment he saw me the way he always did, and beside him, Frances Beckett closed her laptop halfway. Francis was our lawyer, 55, precise as a scale, with a reputation for being ruthless and completely fair at the same time. She had handled every legal matter of ours since Walter died. "Mavis," she said, shaking my hand, "Raymond told me what happened." "I am sorry. I do not need sympathy," I said, sitting down. "I need options." She nodded, and I saw that she liked the directness. "Good," she said. "Then let us go through it cleanly. You have 3 things your son currently enjoys through the company: his position, the home and the car, and the card. Let us take them one at a time." She opened a folder on the table and turned the first page toward me. "This is the piece people always get wrong," she said, "so I want to be very clear with you before we touch it. Dale is not an owner of anything. He carries the title of managing partner at the Larkspur, and he is a head chef on the payroll, but he holds no membership interest in Meadowlark, none that has vested, none that he paid for. In the eyes of the law, he is an employee, and Illinois is an at-will state. That means the company may end his employment at any time for any reason that is not unlawful, and it may stop paying a discretionary bonus whenever it chooses." I let that settle in the quiet room. "So the title is only a word," I said. "Only a word," Francis answered. "He built a whole idea of himself on a word. And you may take the word back." Raymond shifted in his chair. "Mavis, we can do this slowly if you want," he said. "The bonus first, then the position, then let him find his own housing over a few months." "No," I said. "Slow is the cruel way. Slow is cutting off a finger a day instead of pulling the bandage all at once. He needs to feel the full weight of it, or he will never understand how far he had drifted." Francis looked at me a moment, then nodded and turned the next page. "The home," she said. "The condo is company housing provided as a benefit tied to his role. When the role ends, the benefit ends. There is no lease with a fixed term. Under Illinois law, month-to-month tenancy is ended with 30 days written notice, which we can serve today." She held up a hand before I could speak. "But I want you to understand the reality. If he refuses to leave when the notice runs out, we cannot change the locks or put his things on the sidewalk. We would have to file an eviction in court and let a judge order it, and that takes time, weeks, sometimes longer. I do not expect it to come to that. When a man receives a formal notice from a property management company, instead of from his mother, something changes in him." "Then serve it today," I said. "Properly by the book, 30 days. I will not do anything that is not clean. And if he tries to find out who owns the company I asked..." Francis smiled slightly. "The public manager of record is Raymond. Control sits with the Albright Family Trust, and the beneficiaries of a trust are not printed on any public page. He can pull the state filing, and he will see Meadowlark, and he will see Raymond's name, and nothing else. To go further, he would have to start asking questions, and by the time he thinks to the 30 days will nearly be gone." She moved to the last page. "The car and the card are the simple ones. The Cadillac is titled to Meadowlark. He only ever had authorization to drive it, which we revoke in writing with a request to return it within 48 hours. The card is an additional card on your personal account. You cancel it with one phone call, and it is dead within the hour." I looked at the 3 pages side by side on the table. My son would lose his position, his home, his car, and his open access to money, all in the space of a few days. "Is it too harsh?" Raymond asked softly. I thought of the 24 silent faces at my table. "No," I said. "It is the truth arriving all at once, and the truth is not cruel just because it does not soften itself for him." We spent the next 2 hours drafting, a letter ending his employment and his role, a notice of termination of the housing benefit with 30 days to vacate, a revocation of the vehicle authorization with a 48-hour window to return the car. Francis read each one aloud, plain and correct, no anger in a single line, and that plainness was heavier than any anger could have been. The card was the last thing. Francis dialed the bank on speaker. A pleasant voice answered card services. "This is Renee. How can I help?" "Good morning," Francis said. "I am calling on behalf of Mavis Albright, primary account holder, to cancel an additional card." "Of course. May I have the name of the additional card holder?" "Dale Albright," Francis said. "One moment." "Yes, I have it." "Would you like the cancellation immediate or scheduled?" Francis looked at me. "Immediate," I said toward the phone. Renee said it would be blocked within the hour and asked if there was anything else. "Yes," I added, leaning in. "I would like a full 12-month statement of that card's activity emailed to me today." "Of course, Mrs. Albright." We hung up. "That is it," Francis said, closing the laptop. "The letters go out by certified mail and email this afternoon. The card is dead before noon. When do you want the car recovered? Tomorrow, I said. Let him read the letter first. Let him understand this is real before the tow truck arrives. Raymond leaned back. And you, he said. Where will you be when this lands? In my apartment, I said. I am not going to hide. He knows where the office is. But I'm not going to make any of it easy either. And if he goes to the press, Francis said wealthy mother throws son out at Christmas. That is a headline that sells. Let him, I said. I have 28 years of records showing exactly how I built this, and I have 12 months of statements showing exactly how he and his wife spent it. I stood and my knees creaked, and I felt every one of my 63 years in them. Thank you both, I said. I know this is not comfortable. Raymond stood too. Mavis, he said Walter would be proud of you. He always said real love draws a line. I only wish you had drawn it sooner. I felt something catch in my throat. So do I whispered. Everything that happened next in my son's life I did not see with my own eyes. Some of it Raymond described to me later, some of it Dale himself told me months afterward in the small hours of a hospital night when the truth cost him nothing to give. I set it down here the way it came to me, so the whole shape of it is plain. The letters reached Dale the morning of the 28th. Brooke was still asleep. They had been up until 3 the night before arguing about me, Brooke, insisting I had always been dramatic, that I would be back within a day, begging forgiveness. But that morning there was no message from me, no call, only a silence that put a cold weight in his stomach. He opened his laptop at the dining table, and among the holiday newsletters he never read, he saw a subject line that stopped his breath. Notice regarding your position and residence from Meadowlark Administration. He read the first line, then the second, then he read the whole thing 3 times because his mind refused to hold the words. Employment ended. Housing benefit terminated. 30 days to vacate. He found the number at the bottom and called it. A calm, professional voice answered Meadowlark Administration. Good morning. This is Dale Albright, he said, and his own voice sounded strange to him. I received an email about my position in my home. There has to be a mistake. I am the head chef at the Larkspur. I am a managing partner. Mr. Albright, the voice said after a pause of keys, there is no error. Your employment has been ended and the housing provided with it has been terminated. The company is within its rights. But I am a partner, he said. I do not have you recorded as an owner, sir. You are listed as an employee holding a title. Managing partner is a role, not an ownership stake. There is nothing here that has vested to you. Then who owns it? Dale said, and I imagined the panic climbing his throat as he said it. Who do I talk to? That information is not something I can share. If you wish to appeal, you may write to the office on Wacker Drive. Wacker Drive, he repeated slowly. He knew that building. Is there anything else? The voice asked. Yes, he said. When the condo goes back on the market, can I rent it? Of course, the voice said, when it is available, you may apply like any other applicant. The market rate for that unit is roughly $9,000 a month. He nearly dropped the phone. $9,000. His salary as a chef, his real salary, the one that was about to be all he had, was a small fraction of that. It was not a matter of pride. It was arithmetic, and the arithmetic was merciless. Dale Brooke said from the bedroom doorway wrapped in silk, Why are you shouting? We are being put out, he said in a hollow voice. We have to be gone in 30 days. She blinked as if he had spoken another language. No, she said, this is your place. You run a restaurant. It is company housing, he said. It always was. But you have rights. They cannot just... Yes, they can, he said. And they did. She walked over and read the screen over his shoulder, and her face went from confusion to disbelief to a hard, bright fury. This is because of Christmas, she said. Your mother did this. Somehow she talked the owner into it. I do not know, Dale said, running his hands through his hair. I do not know, but I am going to find out. He took his jacket and the Cadillac keys and drove to Wacker Drive. He had never been to the office. The receptionist Tessa greeted him, and when he gave his name, her expression flickered for just an instant and he noticed it. She stepped away, and while he waited, he looked at the wall of photographs, and he froze. There in a large frame in the center was his father, Walter Albright, in a chef's coat, smiling in front of a half-built dining room. The small brass plate beneath it read, Walter Albright, co-founder, 1985 to 2019, in memoriam. Co-founder. His father, the line cook, the man who had died over a set of kitchen plans, had been a founder of the company that was now putting him on the street. And in the background of the photograph, a little out of focus, stood a woman with her hair pinned back holding a folder, her shoulders set in a way he almost recognized. A man came down the hall mid-50s, an excellent suit gray at the temples, his hand already out. "I am Raymond Whitfield, Executive Director. I understand you have questions about your position." Dale shook the hand on reflex, his mind still on the photograph. "That picture," he said. "My father worked here." Raymond followed his eyes, and something like grief crossed his face. "Walter was a great deal more than an employee," he said. "But that is a separate matter. Come, let us talk in my office." Raymond told him what the administration had told him gently, but without a crack, that the decision was fully within the company's rights, that he was welcome to appeal in writing, that the market rate on the condo was what it was, and he was welcome to apply when it opened. "Who owns the company?" Dale asked again. "My mother said something at dinner if it reached the owner if this is her doing." "Your mother has nothing to do with company decisions," Raymond said. And Dale told me later that he heard the smallest strangeness in the way Raymond said it, a care around the words. "It is simply business." "Then let me apply to keep my job my home. I can pay more," Dale said. "The market rent is $9,000, Raymond answered evenly. "Can you pay that?" Dale opened his mouth and closed it. "There are other apartments in this city," Raymond said not unkindly. "I would start looking soon. January is a hard month to find a place." As Dale left, his eyes went back to the photograph of his father and to the woman behind his shoulder. And for the first time, an impossible thought moved at the edge of his mind, and he pushed it away because it was too large to hold. That same afternoon, Brooke went to the shops on Michigan Avenue because for her retail had always been the answer to a bad day. At the register, she handed over the silver card she always used, the one that never had a limit, the one that made the salespeople smile at her. The reader thought for a moment and then declined it. "Try it again," she said, keeping her smile. The cashier tried twice more. Declined. "I am sorry, ma'am, the card is not going through. Do you have another?" The people behind her in line began to murmur, and she felt her face go hot. "It must be a system error," she said, and put the card away and walked out with her heart pounding and called the bank from the sidewalk. She gave the card number and the last four and asked what was wrong. "May I have the primary account holder's name?" the agent said. Brooke gave her own name. "I am sorry," the agent said, "this is an additional card. The primary holder is Mavis Albright, and this card was canceled yesterday at the primary holder's request." Brooke stood very still on Michigan Avenue while the cold went through her, not sadness, but fury, and she called Dale. "Your mother," she said when he answered, "canceled my card." "Which card?" he said, and she could hear that he already knew. "The one I use, the one I always use. How could she?" "Brooke, that is not your card," Dale said slowly, as if he were only now hearing his own words. "It is an additional card on my mother's account." "You told me the company gave it to us," she said. "I thought it did," he said. "You lied or you never bothered to know." "Brooke, we can fix this. I have my own card, we can." "My own card has a limit of $2,000, she said coldly. "Do you know what I spend in a month? Do you know what it costs to keep up my image my whole life?" "Maybe that is the problem," he said quietly. "What did you say?" "Nothing," he said. "I am coming home." And she stood in the middle of the avenue, surrounded by other people's shopping bags in front of windows full of things she could no longer have. And for the first time in 3 years, Brooke felt poor, and she hated the feeling with everything in her. The next morning the car went. 2 men in reflective vests rang the bell at 8:15, holding clipboards. "Good morning, Mr. Albright. We are from Meadowlark. We are here to recover the Cadillac Space 7. "Recover it," Dale said. "That is my car." The older man turned his clipboard around. "According to our records, the vehicle is company property. You held authorization to use it, which has been revoked. We need the keys and your signature on this return receipt." "That car was given to me 2 years ago," Dale said, and I heard from Raymond that his voice broke on it. "I use it for work." "Mr. Albright," the man said with patient courtesy, "the vehicle was never titled to you. Here is your own signature authorizing temporary use for business purposes." And there it was, Dale's signature from 2 years back on a page that plainly said temporary authorization, a page he had signed without reading. Brooke appeared behind him in her pajamas, demanding to know what was happening, and Dale said in a voice with nothing left in it, "They are taking the car." He went inside and came back with the keys and dropped them into the man's open hand without a word. 10 minutes later, the gray Cadillac was gone down the street, and Dale and Brooke stood in the entrance, staring at the empty space where it had been. "Your mother," Brooke said slowly, "is destroying us." And Dale, standing there, finally let the thought he had pushed away come all the way in. The photograph of his father marked co-founder. The word Meadowlark on every letter, the condo, the car, the card, all of it the same company. Raymond's careful voice. The woman standing behind his father's shoulder. He went inside and opened his laptop and typed Meadowlark Hospitality Group ownership. The public filings told him what he already half knew, a company controlled by something called the Albright Family Trust. Raymond Whitfield listed as manager, no other names. He searched for images and found an old article from an opening years ago. And there in the foreground was Raymond cutting a ribbon, and behind him, clear as day this time, in a plain suit, talking to two men who were listening to her with the deference people give to the person who signs the checks, was his mother. The caption named the company and the Albright family. He zoomed in on her face until there was no doubt at all. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." Brooke read it over his shoulder. "Your mother owns it," she said. "All of it. The apartment is hers. The car is hers. The card is hers. Your restaurant is hers. Everything is hers." She sat down hard on the couch, her face gone white, and turned on him with furious eyes. "We have been living in her home, spending her money while you," she said, "while you told everyone at that table that you had made it all yourself." "My God, Dale. You told her to pay rent in her own house." Dale felt sick. "I did not know," he said. "I swear to God I did not know." "How could you not know?" she said. "Did you never ask why a condo in Gold Coast cost you almost nothing? Did it never seem strange?" "I thought it was an employee rate," he said. She always lived so small, the old clothes, the little apartment nobody ever saw. And now he understood that the little apartment nobody ever saw was real, and that everything grand had been the lie, and that he had built his whole idea of himself on top of it. 2 days later, he went to see his grandmother. Ada Boyd, my mother, 81 years old, was in a bed at the hospital, recovering from pneumonia, and Dale had not come once in the 10 days she had been there. He had been too busy with the restaurant and the parties. When he walked in, she was awake reading, and a shadow of disappointment crossed her face before she could hide it. "Dale," she said, "what a surprise." He kissed her thin cheek and asked how she was feeling, and she told him better, and there was an awkward silence, and then she looked at him with the eyes that had always seen more than he wanted to show. "You did not come just to ask after my health," she said. "What happened?" "I need you to tell me the truth about Mom," he said, and sat down. "What truth?" she said. "Meadowlark, the money, all of it." Ada set her book down slowly. "So you finally found out," she said. "I was there from the start, son. I watched your mother and father save every dollar for years. I watched them open that little diner with their own hands. I watched them build the whole thing one place at a time. Why did they never tell me?" he asked. She sighed a tired sound that seemed to carry decades. "Because your mother wanted you strong on your own 2 feet, she said. She did not want you growing up like those soft, rich children who think the world owes them a living." "But they lied to me," he said. "They did not lie to you," Ada said firmly. "They simply did not tell you everything. There is a difference. They let me believe I was taking care of her," he said, "that I was the one holding things up. And that felt good, did it not?" Ada said, not unkindly. It felt good to be the successful son looking after his poor widowed mother. He opened his mouth to argue and found nothing there. "Your mother," Ada went on, "could have lived in a mansion, could have stopped working 10 years ago. She chose to live small and work every day, and she chose to give you advantages without letting you lean your whole weight on them. Or she tried to." "Dale, how much did you spend last month on restaurants and clothes and trips?" He did not answer. "Your wife, Ada, said has posted photograph after photograph of the two of you living like royalty while your mother, who owns all of it, wears a coat she has had for 6 years. I never asked for any of it," he said weakly. "You did not ask," she said, "but you took it. And you did not just take it, son. You boasted about it. And then on Christmas in front of 24 people, you told your mother to pay rent or get out." Tears came down his face. "I did not know," he said. "And does that make it better?" Ada asked. She took his hand with what strength she had. "Your mother taught you with her silence, but you learned the wrong lesson. You thought her humility was weakness, and her generosity was something you were owed." "What do I do now, Grandma?" he said. "Learn what she was trying to teach you all along," Ada said. "The real value of things, what it costs to build something. the difference between having a privilege and deserving it. "How do I start?" he asked. "From nothing," she said. "The way your mother and father did. Without their money, without their name, just you and your own 2 hands. That is the only road that leads back to being able to look her in the eye." And he sat there a long time holding his grandmother's hand, crying for what he had lost, and for what he was only beginning to understand. Brooke did not come with him down that road. She wanted him to go to me to apologize to Grovel to get it all back. He would not beg his mother for money, he told her, and she could not understand a man who suddenly had pride about the very thing he had spent so freely. She left within the week for her parents in Miami, and the note she left behind said only, "Call me when you are the man I married again." He signed the divorce papers a few months later without a fight, and part of him felt something loosen in his chest because she had wanted a life he could no longer pretend to give, and because he needed to find out who he was without all that weight of other people's expectations. He took a small apartment on the South Side, 400 square feet, on the 4th floor of a building with no elevator, $850 a month walls with old water stains, and a kitchen with appliances older than he was. It was ugly and it was small, but when he signed the lease, it was for the first time in his life truly his. He moved in on the last day of January with 2 suitcases and a shame that sat on his chest like a stone, and he sat on the bare floor because he had no furniture yet, and did the arithmetic of his real life on his phone. His take-home pay as a chef a little under $3,000 a month. Rent and utilities $1,100. Food groceries, now not restaurants, $300. Transit $60. By the time he was done, there was almost nothing left, and he understood that in his old life, Brooke had spent his entire margin of survival on a single handbag. He started looking for extra work. And then one night, eating instant noodles on the floor of that empty apartment because the small table would not arrive until the following week, his phone lit up with a message from a number he did not know. "Hello, Dale. My name is Warren Ash. I run a community kitchen on the South Side. We train people who are trying to get back on their feet, and we feed a neighborhood that needs feeding. I knew your father a long time ago. We worked side by side before Meadowlark was even a name. I have been hearing about you. I think you and I should talk." Dale read it twice, and something in the mention of his father steadied him. He wrote back a single word. "When?" What Dale did not know, what he would not learn for a long time, was that Warren Ash had not found him by accident at all. "I had called Warren myself 2 weeks before, and asked an old friend of my husband's to open a door and let my son believe he had walked through it on his own." Warren Ash ran his kitchen out of a converted garage on the South Side, a long room with scarred steel tables, a wall of donated ovens, and a chalkboard that listed the day's meals in a careful hand. He was near 60, with wild gray hair and the energy of a man who had loved his work for 40 years and was not done yet. "Your father," he said the first morning, pointing a wooden spoon at a photograph tacked to the wall, "was the finest cook I ever stood next to. He understood food the way some men understand music, not just how to make it, but what it was for." Dale looked at the photo, his father 20 years younger, laughing in an apron among a crew of young cooks. "I have a project," Warren said. "We feed people who cannot afford to eat well, and we teach a trade to people the city has given up on, folks coming out of hard times, out of shelters, out of prison, trying to build a life. The pay is nothing to speak of. The work matters more than anything I have ever done." "How much?" Dale asked. $2,200 a month to start," Warren said, "and you will be on your feet at a steel table by 6 in the morning, not sitting in an office." "When do I start?" Dale said. Warren grinned. "Monday. Wear shoes you do not mind ruining. That is how the months of my son's real education began, and I know the shape of them, because Raymond kept me quietly informed, and because Warren called me now and then to say he is coming along. Maeve. He is coming along." Dale rose at 5:30. He rode 2 trains to the garage kitchen. He worked until the last pan was scrubbed, and he came home to his 400 square feet and cooked something plain because he had learned to cook plain things, eggs and pasta and honest soup, and he spent his nights bent over an old laptop with a crack across one corner drawing. His next-door neighbor, an older woman named Loretta Dunn, knocked one evening to borrow sugar and stayed to look at the nearly empty apartment. "You just move in," she said, "and where is your wife?" "I do not have one anymore," he said. "I am starting over." Loretta nodded as if that were the most ordinary thing in the world. "Life puts you where you need to be," she said, "not where you wanted to go. Come eat tomorrow. I am making a pot of chili too big for one old woman." He went. Her chili tasted like something from a home, And for the first time since Christmas, he felt the warmth of a table where nobody was keeping score. What he was drawing on that cracked laptop night after night was a plan. Not a restaurant to make him rich. A network of small community kitchens across the neighborhoods the city had left behind. Each one a place that served good affordable meals and trained the people around it in a real trade cooking. Baking running a line, managing a small operation, skills a person could carry into a paying job anywhere. He had run the numbers 100 times. One central kitchen and 4 satellites, the equipment, the build-out, the first 2 years of staff and training, roughly $1.5 million. The margins were thin on purpose. It was built to sustain itself and to lift the people inside it, not to make anyone wealthy. He called it in the quiet of his own head his father's idea finished. He had learned more about food and about people in 6 months at that steel table than in all his years of chasing a critic's stars. Through those months, he reached out to me again and again. He called, he wrote, and I did not answer, not because I had not forgiven him, but because there is a difference between forgiving a person and handing them back the thing they have not yet earned. Then one night, months in, he sent a message that was different from all the others. Mom, it said, I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not expect you to give anything back. I only want you to know that I finally understand and that I am working honestly with my own hands, and I am proud of it, in a way I was never proud of the old life. I love you. I read it 3 times. 10 minutes later, I had Raymond write back on my behalf, because I was not ready yet to use my own voice. Your mother received your message, Raymond wrote. She is well. She is proud that you have found honest work. Keep going. When the time is right, she will come to you. And I watched from a distance my son keep going. Spring came and Warren told him what I had arranged for him to be told, that a group of investors interested in projects with social impact wanted to hear his plan. He spent 2 weeks preparing the way a man prepares for the one chance he believes will not come again. He worked the steel tables by day and built his presentation by night. Loretta brought him coffee and sat and watched him work, and one evening she said, You remind me of a woman I used to see on the train years ago, always carrying folders, always with that same look you have right now, half determination and half fear. What was she like, he asked. Older, plain, sharp as a tack, Loretta said. I once saw her back 3 men in suits into a corner over some deal, and she never raised her voice once. She had a jaw a little like yours. Was it my mother? He asked. I could not tell you, son Loretta said. But whoever she was, she built things that lasted the way you are trying to now. The address Warren gave him for the meeting was on Wacker Drive, and Dale felt the cold go through him when he recognized the building. He called Warren from the sidewalk. There is a mistake. This is the Meadowlark office. There is no mistake, Warren said gently. Trust me. Go up. So he went up carrying a worn briefcase, wearing a suit he had bought secondhand for $40, the first thing he had spent real money on in months, and 50 pages of a dream printed on plain paper. Tessa at the desk recognized him and smiled and said, They are waiting for you upstairs. Who is waiting? He asked. She only smiled and told him to go up and see. The elevator carried him to a floor he had never stood on, a long room with glass walls and the whole gray sweep of the city and the lake beyond it. At the end of a long oak table in a charcoal suit, her hair pinned back, her hands folded in front of her, sat his mother. To her right, Raymond. To her left, Francis. And along the far chairs, 3 others he did not know but who were plainly part of the company's leadership. Dale, I said in a calm and even voice. Please sit down. He could not move for a moment. Mom, he said, I am the chair here, I said without cruelty but without softness either. And you are Dale Albright, the chef who has come to present a project to us. Is that right? He swallowed. That is right. Then take your place and begin, I said. We have 1 hour. On unsteady legs, he crossed to the screen and connected his cracked laptop. And while it woke up, he looked at me, and I looked back at him the way I would look at any stranger asking my company for $1.5 million. Because in a way, he was a stranger. The son I had carried out of that condo on Christmas night did not exist anymore. Good morning, he began, and his voice barely shook. My name is Dale Albright. I am a chef, and I am here to tell you how to feed a neighborhood and give 200 people a trade at the same time. For 45 minutes, he laid out every piece of it. The central kitchen and the 4 satellites, the training program and the people it would lift. The menu built around what was cheap and good and grown nearby. The build-out, the equipment, the staffing, the timeline, Every number he had run 100 nights in a row. A cost he could defend down to the last dollar because he had spent 6 months learning what a case of onions costs and what it costs to keep a walk-in cold. A thin margin enough to keep the doors open and the people paid not enough to make anyone rich. I watched him, and I took notes, and I saw Raymond nod once, and I saw Frances run his figures on her calculator and set it down. When he finished, there was a silence in the glass room. Then Raymond spoke. "Your margins are tight," he said. "How do you protect against overruns?" "Because I have stood at the table for 6 months," Dale said. "I know every supplier and every price and every place a project like this bleeds money, and I have built in a cushion for the things I cannot see coming." Frances asked what would happen if the permit stalled. "I have already had early conversations with the city," he said. "This lines up with what they say they want. I put my chances of approval at better than 8 in 10, and I would rather tell you that honestly than promise you a certainty I do not have." One of the leaders I had brought to the table, a woman who had spent her life measuring returns, raised her hand. "Why should we put $1.5 million into a project that returns almost nothing," she said, "when there are developments that return far more?" "Because this is not about the return," Dale said, and he looked at her without flinching. "This city is pushing people out of the neighborhoods they were born in. A good meal and a real skill are 2 of the few things that let a person stand back up. This will not make us rich. It will let us sleep at night." Then I asked the only question that was ever really mine to ask. "Dale," I said, and the room went still. "Why this? Why now?" He looked at me, and a great deal passed between us in that look 6 months of losing and learning and becoming. Because 6 months ago I lost everything he said. My home, my car, my marriage, my pride. The whole story I had told myself about who I was. And on the floor of an empty apartment, I finally understood something. A kitchen is not for showing off. A kitchen is for feeding people. The people who most need a good meal and a way up are exactly the ones who can never get near either. This exists because I have lived a little the way they live, and because my father and his voice caught. My father taught me that the hands that build a thing matter more than the name on the paper that owns it. I closed my notebook. "Thank you, Dale," I said. "We will make our decision and inform you within 48 hours. That is all." He gathered his laptop and his worn briefcase, and at the door with his hand on the frame he stopped. "Chair Albright," he said. "Whatever you decide, thank you. For everything. Even the parts that hurt." And he left without waiting for an answer. When he was gone, I sat in the quiet with my people. "Opinions," I said. Raymond spoke first. "The plan is sound," he said. "The numbers are real. He has done the work, but the margin is thin, and 1 bad year could cost us." Frances said the legal side was clean, the permits achievable, the risk financial rather than legal. The woman who had asked about returns hesitated, then said as an investment, there are better places for the money. But as a statement of what this company is, as a legacy, this is powerful. I looked out at the city, at the lake, at the gray water Walter had loved. "Walter," I said quietly, "what would you do?" But I already knew. He would have signed it before the meeting was even over. He had spent his whole life saying that a kitchen is not for getting rich, it is for giving people dignity. "We approve it," I said. "The full amount." "Under what terms?" Raymond asked. "Dale runs it as project director," I said. "He reports to this table every month. He has room to work and a firm hand on the money. And if he succeeds, we bring him into Meadowlark not as my son, but as a man who proved what he was worth." 3 weeks later, before I had even told him, my heart finally came looking for me. I was at my desk in the small back office going over Dale's first supplier contracts when the room tilted and a great pressure closed over my chest, the same pressure I imagined took Walter and I had time to get the little lozenge under my tongue before the floor came up. Raymond found me. The next thing I knew clearly was a hospital ceiling and the steady sound of a monitor, and Raymond in the hall telling someone she has been working 16-hour days since Christmas, since she stopped carrying that boy and started carrying the whole company alone again. And then Dale was in the doorway. He came in slowly as if the room might break. "Mom," he said. I opened my eyes and found the strength for a small smile. "Hello, son," I said. He crossed to the bed and took my hand, and his was warm and mine was cold. "What did you do to yourself?" he said. "Why did you push this hard?" "Because I had to be sure," I said, my voice thin, sure of what he asked. "That you had learned it," I said. That when I put this chance in front of you, you would take it for the right reasons and not the old ones. I squeezed his hand as well as I could. Your presentation, I said. Your father would have wept with pride, and the tears came down his face. Forgive me, he said, for every cruel word, for every year I took everything and thanked no one, for Christmas. I raised my free hand and touched his cheek. You are already forgiven, I said. I forgave you the night I walked out that door. What took all this time was waiting for you to forgive yourself. I do not deserve the project, he said. I do not deserve your trust. It was never about deserving, I said. It was about becoming. And you became Dale. I can see it in your eyes now. You understand what a thing costs. You understand the weight of being responsible for other people. You understand the difference between a privilege and a thing you have earned. A doctor came to say I needed rest and looked at Dale and told him he could stay a little longer if he kept it quiet. When the door closed, I told him the thing I had not yet said. The project is approved, I murmured. Full funding. You start as director. Raymond has the terms. You are going to be all right. I am going to be better than all right, he said. But you have to promise me something, I said. Anything, he said. Do not work the way I worked, I told him. Do not carry all of it alone the way I did the way your father did, until it stopped his heart at a desk. Ask for help before you need it. Trust the people beside you. And Dale. Yes, he said. Live, I said. Do not only build kitchens. Build a life worth having. Promise me. I promise Mom, he said. Good, I said, already sliding toward sleep on the medication because I did not do all of this, so you could repeat my mistakes. I did it so you could build something better than I built. A year later, on Christmas Eve, I was in the kitchen of my real apartment, the small one on the quiet street, with photographs of Walter on the walls, and the smell of a roasting turkey filling every corner when Dale arrived at 5 with 2 bags of groceries. I came to help with dinner, he said. You know how to cook now, I said, raising an eyebrow. Loretta taught me the basics, he said. Do not put me in charge of anything with more than 4 ingredients, but I can peel a potato without losing a finger. We worked side by side, him at the vegetables, me at the gravy, the radio playing carols low. How many are coming? He asked. 12, I said. Raymond and his family, Francis, Warren, Loretta, your grandmother, some of the people from the company. And I said the Hartleys, and a boy named Cody. I invited them. He looked at me. Mom, it is a family dinner. It is, I said. And family is not always blood. Sometimes it is the people who build alongside you. The table that night was smaller than the one the year before, mismatched plates and ordinary glasses and food made with love instead of show. And the difference was that every laugh at it was real. The Hartleys had been the first family the kitchen program lifted, a mother and father and 2 children and a grandmother who had shared 3 rooms and now had steady work and a real home. And their youngest, Cody, 10 years old, showed Dale a drawing he had made of a tall building with the word Hope printed above it, and the whole table clapped. At 10 o'clock, Dale stood up, and I saw his heart going in his chest. I want to say something, he said, and the table went quiet. 1 year ago tonight, at a table like this one, I said the cruelest thing I have ever said to someone I love. I told my mother to pay rent or get out of a house that was hers. I humiliated her in front of everyone. And he said, and he looked at me with wet eyes. She did the one thing only a truly wise mother would do. She did not shout. She did not explain. She let me fall. She let me lose all of it. And in the falling, she taught me how to fly. He drew an envelope from his jacket and set it in front of me. This is for you, he said. I opened it. Inside was a check, and on it was every dollar I had saved this year on my real salary, he said, which is not everything I spent on that card in those 3 years, not yet. But it is a start, and I will keep paying it back for as long as it takes. I looked at the check, and then I tore it in half, and then in half again. I do not want your money, Dale, I said softly. I want your character, and that my son is something no one can put a price on. I stood and I held him, and for the first time in a year, mother and son held on to each other, and the whole table came apart into applause, and my mother, Ada, was crying, and Loretta called out bravo, and Raymond raised his glass, and Cody Hartley whispered to his mother that when he grew up, he wanted to be like Dale. And later, when the plates were cleared, Warren caught my son's eye across the room and told him the last thing Dale did not know, that it had been me who called Warren all those months ago and asked an old friend to open a door and let a proud young man believe he had found it himself. Dale looked at me across the table, and he understood at last that I had been walking a little ahead of him the whole way, holding a lantern he could not see. A few years after that, on a bright, cold morning, we stood together in front of the first of the larger kitchens, a building with the words, "The Walter Albright Community Kitchen," set above the door. Dale was 38 now, with the first gray coming in at his temples, and a calm in his eyes that had not been there before. Beside him stood a woman named Claire Mercer, a teacher who ran cooking classes in the hardest neighborhoods in the city, who loved his work and not his name, and who had been at his side for 2 years. Cody Hartley was there, 15 now, already talking about culinary school. Loretta sat in the front row with a handkerchief ready. Warren, Raymond, Francis, the whole crew that had made it real, all of them there. "Your father would be shouting for joy," I told my son. "I know," he said. "Sometimes I feel like he is standing right here watching." "He always has been," I said. When Dale took the microphone, he set aside the speech he had written and spoke from his heart instead. "This place carries my father's name." He said, a man who believed that a kitchen is not for building wealth but for building dignity. But it is just as much my mother's Mavis Albright who taught me the hardest and most important lesson of my life, that real love will sometimes let you fall so that you can finally learn to fly. He looked at me across the little crowd. A few years ago, I was an arrogant man who thought he deserved everything and had earned nothing. Today, I am only a man who tries every single day to be worthy of the name I carry. These kitchens are not my achievement. They are ours. And as long as I am alive, I will keep building not for my own pocket, but for all of us. The crowd stood, and he cut the ribbon and the doors opened. That night, the two of us sat on the small balcony of my apartment and watched the lights of Chicago spread out toward the black water of the lake. "Are you happy, son?" I asked. "More than I have ever been," he said. "And Claire is not Brooke. She is real. She loves the work, not the shine on it." "That is the whole difference," I said, "between love and a transaction." He nodded, and then he asked in you, "Mom, are you happy?" I thought about it carefully. "I am at peace," I said, "which is the better thing. Happiness comes and goes with the weather. Peace stays." "And what gives you peace?" he asked. "Watching you become the man I always knew was in there," I said. "Watching our name come to mean something larger than money. Knowing that when I am gone, there will be something worth inheriting, and that it is not the buildings." "Do not talk like that. He said you have 30 years left in you." Maybe I said and laughed. "But when my time does come, I want you to know one thing. Everything I built," I said, and I lifted my hand toward the glittering city, "all of it is not my real legacy. You are, the man you chose to become. That is the thing I made that matters." He wiped his eyes. "I do not deserve a mother like you," he said. "No one deserves love, Dale," I said. "We can only honor it, and you have honored it." And we sat there together while the city we had built our lives in shone below us, a city of second chances and honest work, and a legacy that would outlast us both. And I understood at last that my silence, the silence that had almost destroyed my family, had finally spoken, and its meaning was clear. Real love is not proved by easy gifts. It is proved by hard lessons. It is not counted in dollars spent. It is counted in character forged. I had spent a lifetime building a company. But the finest thing I ever made was a son who came to understand that the worth of a person is not measured by what he owns, but by what he builds with his own 2 hands.